Hey y'all, welcome to Martell's Movie Madness. This is your host, as always, of course, Ryan Martell. This week I'm doing a episode about black horror, my favorite black horror movies. Just gonna talk about them a little bit. Um, of course, I'm doing this, and then I'm also doing a Martell's Movie Madness live with a mystery movie that is also a celebration of black horror. On February 12th at Vizart Video, you should come on out to that and hang out and watch a really badass movie with me. Another date that I have to plug this week, the only other date I have this week, is February 11th at Vizart Video also. Is the Cult Movies in a Cave. It's a movie called Bad CGI Sharks, which I guess pretty much explains it all. So yeah, those are all the dates I have, and then, of course, want to make sure that everybody is following us on social media at Martell's Movie Madness on Instagram and Facebook, at Movie Madness 69 on Twitter. Go ahead and find us on YouTube. Just type in Martell's Movie Madness; it'll come right up. The YouTube channel's kind of been abandoned right now, but there is some stuff up there. There's some content there, and it will be updated again soon. I've got to do another DVD haul video for that, and some other just fun content. I just got to work all that stuff out. Timing has been a real big issue for me lately. I've been trying to work a lot, and because I've got a lot of things to finish paying off. I've got other things that I need to attend to with my car. There's some repairs that need to be done around the house. So this is a perfect time for me to now also plug the Patreon. Of course, you can join for as little as $3 a month just to get that early access every week. Episodes drop on Sundays on Patreon and Thursdays to the public, so you'll get that 4-day early access to the show. Then there's the $10 tier where you can get some bonus episodes every month. Bonus episodes up right now are the full version of the Christmas episode, the full version of the Halloween episode, the John Waters appreciation, the Friday the 13th franchise breakdown. There's a Disney Plus review. There's a Flesher review that's on the Days of the Dead post show. There's a Days of the Dead pre-show. Those episodes are some of them are a little bit shorter. Some of them are about the same length as a regular episode. Some of them are a lot longer than a regular episode. But yeah, usually get 2 of those a month. Sometimes I do a couple more, and sometimes I only do 1. It all depends on, like I said, how much time there is in a month, which hopefully I'm going to be about to wrangle that down, and we'll be putting out some good content for you guys pretty steadily here in the upcoming months. Like I said, I am going to be talking about my favorite black horror movies this week. But before I get into that, of course, I've got to do my What You Watching segment. First up is the Pick of the Week. Pick of the Week this week is a movie called Harvest Lake, which I rewatched on Tubi. This is a movie I watched back in my Fire Stick days, and I had completely forgotten about it. I was watching it thinking that it was going to be a new movie that I would talk about, only to realize about 5 or 6 minutes in that, I've seen this already. It's a very fun movie, very sexy. It has it's not a very long movie, but it has a scene that just kind of drags a little bit. But other than that, the movie's pretty fucking fun to watch. It's a good hangout movie if you want to put it on and watch and kind of poke jokes at the over the topness of some of the things. But it's also really well produced, and the acting is actually not terrible. So the only thing I think that is really over the top is the premise, which is just about any horror sci-fi movie. There's some good nudity in it. You get full frontal male and female nudity. There is some gay representation going on, and it stars the beautiful Ellie Church. She is wonderful. I'd love to see her in more movies. But yeah, that's my pick of the week this week. That's one that I just haven't. It's been a while since I watched it. So long, in fact, that I had forgotten that I even watched it. But I gave it a 3 out of 5 on the Martell scale, and of course, I said that one is available to stream for free on Tubi with ads. But it's like an hour and 17 minutes, so you only have like 2, maybe 3 ad breaks in the whole movie. So yeah, go check it out on Tubi. Yeah, that's it. Next up, I'm gonna do my Shudder movies for the week because that's the next one with the least in it. Tammy and the T-Rex. I did not cop that. I think it was Vinegar Syndrome that put out the new Blu-ray of Tammy and the T-Rex, the R-rated gore cut. Did not get that when it came out. I don't know if it's still available, but I think it was like $50 for the Blu-ray, and I was just like, I do want to see this monstrosity of a movie, but I also don't know if I want to spend $50 on the Blu-ray. Luckily, Shudder picked it up, and I got to watch it on Shudder. Very fun movie. Did I do the Martell scale for Harvest Lake? Anyway, Harvest Lake got a 3.3 out of 5 on the Martell scale. Tammy and the T-Rex. Back to Tammy and the T-Rex. Very fucking crazy movie. Pretty sure she has sex with a dinosaur. There's lots of really fun practical gore effects. Not the most realistic looking things, of course, but fun nonetheless. It's got the kid who played, or he's not a kid, but it's got the guy who played Isaac in Children of the Corn. Paul Walker and Denise Richards, both early in their career. I think it was originally released as a family movie, so it was like it had to have been cut all to hell because this movie, the movie I watched at least, was not a family movie at all. It had blood and guts and overt sexual themes for some reason. But basically, Paul Walker gets his brain put into a robotic T-Rex, and yeah, shenanigans ensue. So I really want to say you should check that one out if you have Shudder. It's definitely a fan of people who like movies that make you say, what the fuck, or just over the top crazy stuff in general. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 on the Martell scale, so definitely go give that one a look. It's fun as hell. Yeah, that's my Shudder for this week. I need to start watching more shit on Shudder. I feel like I only watch it when Joe Bob's on. But they have a lot of good stuff on there, a lot of great selection. They've got a ton of foreign horror on there that I need to get into. Next up are my VizArt video rentals for the week, since I didn't have anything on Prime or Hulu or Netflix or anything this week. First up is The Elephant Man. David Lynch directed The Elephant Man. It stars Anthony Hopkins and William Hurt as the Elephant Man. William Hurt is the Elephant Man. It's a very tragic and somewhat heartwarming movie at times. Definitely what I would say was, I definitely call this David Lynch's most grounded movie. It has the most straightforward point A, point B plot out of anything he's ever made, at least in my opinion. It is a absolute wonderful film, though, so you should go ahead and check that one out. I gave it a 5 out of 5 on the Martell scale. So it's definitely worth watching. So it's it's one of my new favorites. Um, Next up, we got Judgment Night. Judgment Night starring Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr. It's got Jeremy Piven, Brad Dourif. Is it Brad Dourif? Is that who it is? That's the fucking... No, it's not Brad Dourif, because that's the guy from Child's Play. Hold on one second. I've got to... Of course, it gives me that interference sound. But yeah, Judgment Night was a decent enough movie. Honestly, it was a lot better than I was expecting because somebody had told me that it wasn't really like the greatest thing ever, but I thought it was actually pretty good. And it's Stephen Dorff, not Stephen Dorff, not Dorff, who is also in the movie. But Dennis Leary's the bad guy, and it also has Peter Green in it from Mask and Pulp Fiction. He's in a whole bunch of stuff from that era. Everlast has a little small part in it, the rapper. And yeah, so if you don't know anything about Judgment Night, the movie is, about this group of friends who are going to a boxing match, and they end up getting off the freeway and becoming witnesses to this crime and having to escape from Dennis Leary and his goons. But that's I didn't know anything about the movie itself except for who was in it and the soundtrack before I picked it up. So I'm going to go ahead and say I gave it a 3.75 out of 5. The only reason I didn't give it a 4 is because the soundtrack is amazing. And none of the songs are in the movie. It's one of those soundtracks from the 90s where it's just excellent fucking music. Like they take it's hip hop artists and rock bands, heavy bands, alternative rock bands and heavy bands doing songs together, collaborations. But not one song is in the actual film itself. So it gets a 0.25 deduction for not featuring at least the Judgment Night theme song that Biohazard and Onyx did in the movie. But yeah, other than that, it's a fucking great movie. I'd say check it out if you like 90s action movies. So that's what that is. Next up is a double feature of Bikini Girls, softcore Skinamax style pornography. The first one was Bikini Girls on Dinosaur Planet, which was a very fun watch. It's still pretty sexy considering how ridiculous the sex scenes actually are. There are some good looking girls in this. It is an all girl movie. But there's still those moments where it's like, okay, that's obviously and flagrantly not, that is simulated, it's simulated. But if you are a fan of that cheeky Skinamax kind of movie, then this is definitely one for you. I am definitely a fan of that type of movie. This one is not it's not Playmate of the Apes or Lord of the G-Strings, but it'll definitely get the job done as far as something to watch and just have a good time with. Give it a 2.5 out of 5 on the Martell scale. Not the greatest thing, not the worst thing. I don't want people to misinterpret when I watch these softcore or even hardcore movies on here. I do not use these for masturbatory purposes. Some of them do turn me on, but this is not like a jerk off podcast. So I do not watch these movies to jerk off. I watch them for entertainment value, and then review them based on that. Um, but I did at one point have a tier on my Patreon where I was going to be talking about the more sexual side of the porno movies. I took it down because I just didn't really think it would do well. Not that any of the other tiers on my Patreon are particularly doing well, but I didn't think that one would ever really kind of take off. But if that's something you'd be more interested in, just let me know on social media. I do have quite a collection of smut because for one reason or another, that kind of thing just kind of tickles me. But yeah, next up is the Bikini Goddesses. This is on the same disc with Bikini Girls on Dinosaur Planet. I gave it a 2 out of 5 on the Martell scale. Not quite as fun and cheeky as Bikini Girls on Dinosaur Planet. It's definitely more stylized and a better made film. The production value is definitely higher there, but the quality of the actual content itself, I feel like, is a little more cookie cutter and not as fun as Dinosaur Planet. So yeah, that one gets the 2 out of 5. Next up is Rewind This, a documentary about VHS tapes and VHS collecting and like the history of VHS tapes or home video in general, I guess, because they do touch on Betamax for a minute. Very fun. I had a lot of fun watching that documentary. I had watched Adjust Your Tracking before and a couple of other ones on Prime. Rewind This had been suggested to me because they said it was a lot better than Adjust Your Tracking and some of the other ones. And I think it was. It's a perfect length for a documentary about anything that is kind of set in stone. And I mean, well, I guess, because like some documentaries can be long, but some aren't. This one did not feel very long. It felt like it was the perfect length. Who's to say if it would have been any longer, it would have been like worse or better. I don't know. I do know that I watched one like last year, and it was like almost 3 hours long, and that was just too goddamn long. It was getting boring at certain points, but Rewind This is very fun to check out. Definitely go look at it if you have an interest in the history of home video, and VHS tapes specifically. It's a 4 out of 5 on the Martell scale, so definitely worth checking out. And last but not least, wrapping it up with another 5 out of 5 on the Martell scale. I watched Pan's Labyrinth. Guillermo. Jesus Christ, why is that so hard for me to say? I'm a fucking redneck. I'm sorry. Guillermo del Toro directed Pan's Labyrinth. I think he wrote it too. Man, this movie's fucking amazing. Stunning visuals. It's shot very beautifully, down to the lighting and the colors and everything that are used in the movie. The story itself is very good. The dialogue, the writing. It is in Spanish with English subtitles, but I don't feel like that takes anything away from the movie. I'm a person who has a hard time reading. I felt like the subtitles were very good. I didn't have to pause it or like rewind it back to catch anything, so I definitely recommend this one. It has definitely been added to a new favorites list. I'm for sure going to be rewatching it at some point on down the line, and it may even be a pick of the week one day. So yeah, that's all I got here for the What You Watching segment. That wraps up this intro here. I'm going to take a little break, and then when I get back, we're going to be talking about my favorite black horror movies. This could be movies that have a predominantly black cast, or just a lot of black people in it. It could be horror movies that were made by black people for black people. There's a little bit of the blaxploitation horror. There's a little bit more of the urban '90s horror. There's the more modern stuff like Get Out, and then there's the classic um, horror movies with black leads or strong black characters that I'll be talking about as well. So, so yeah, that's what I got on the other side of this little sound bit that I'm going to play now. So, hang in there. Thanks for listening.
They're still here.
They're after us. They know we're still in here.
They're after the place. They don't know why. They just remember. Remember that they want to be in here.
What the hell are they?
They're us, that's all. There's no more room in hell.
What?
Something my granddaddy used to tell us. You know Macumba? Voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. Used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Alright, y'all, welcome back. And like I said, we got black horror going for you right now. That little clip, of course, is from Dawn of the Dead. Ken Foree doing his iconic line from the franchise. It's one of the things that most people associate with that movie. It's the most memorable part of the movie for a lot of people. Ken Foree is an actor that has done a lot of horror and genre movies throughout his years. He's also known for being the dad on Kenan and Kel. He played Cutter on Devil's Rejects, and he's Joe Grizzly in Rob Zombie's Halloween. So yeah, that's a fun little tidbit for you. But yeah, there we go. Dawn of the Dead right off the gate. George A. Romero was seemingly a very big fan of using black actors and actresses as very prominent parts of his movies, especially back in those days. Of course, Night of the Living Dead has the black lead. He lives till the end and then dies, but man, that was super groundbreaking at the time that he even made it that far. Of course, there's that old trope where the black guy has to die first, or he dies very early on. If he doesn't die early on, he's definitely not there at the end, which thankfully has changed. So you'll still see it every now and then, but it's not as prominent as it once was. But yeah, those two are great. Really, you can't go wrong with any George A. Romero from that era. Those first three Dead movies, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, are great. So you need to go ahead and check all three of those out. A personal favorite of mine, Tales from the Hood, I find is a quintessential black horror movie. I'm just a white dude, so I'm no expert on black horror movies or black cinema in general. I do like to consume a lot of black media and black movies, and I love black horror and like the more what is usually called urban drama or like urban action movies. But Tales from the Hood, I'm pretty sure is all black filmmakers. It's definitely produced by Spike Lee, so that makes it, just twice as black as it was before. Definitely has a ton of really good shit going on in it. Like, every segment is good. It's got a great cast. From the guy that hosts that's at the funeral parlor, to David Allen Greer showing up in the domestic abuse segment. The thing I like the most about Tales from the Hood is each segment deals with a social issue. Tales from the Hood 2 also does this as well. I just don't think that there was any way for Tales from the Hood 2 to live up to Tales from the Hood 1. Just the quality of the movie for the first one was just so good that it was going to be hard for them to do it with the second one. That being said, I do like Tales from the Hood 2. I didn't think it was a piece of shit like everybody else did, but comparing it to Tales from the Hood 1, it's day and night. The segment with the dolls, the puppets or whatever, they're amazing. It's super amazing, and it's ahead of its time, and the effects and everything are fucking perfect in it. I don't know what else I can say about Tales from the Hood. It's definitely my go-to when people ask me about like urban horror or black horror. I feel like it is the go-to. Some other people would dive deeper into the like blaxploitation stuff. I do have a few of those on here to talk about. Abby, of course, is a great example of that early blaxploitation horror movie vibe. It's like The Exorcist with an older main character and a black main character. It's definitely known as the Black Exorcist, so that's a fair comparison, and it definitely has parallels. Like the movie and the story itself has parallels. It's not just that it's a possession movie and there's a black lead character. This actually is kind of like a black version of The Exorcist, which a lot of early black horror movies that were made for black people, like blaxploitation movies, were just like that. Like Blackula and Blackenstein, they were just like black versions of the original monsters and for the lack of a better term, white movies. Which I think Abby actually might have come out before The Exorcist. Now that I'm thinking about it, but I'm not 100% sure, so I can't really comment. So maybe The Exorcist is the white version of Abby. I don't know. Either way, Abby is fun, and you should definitely check it out if you get the chance to. There's another blaxploitation horror movie that I like a lot called Petey Wheatstraw, and that is Rudy Ray Moore doing a horror movie. And God, it's just off the walls. It is just batshit crazy from the beginning to the end. Petey Wheatstraw makes a deal with the devil to marry the devil's daughter, and tries to back out of that deal when he realizes that the devil's daughter is ugly. And it's fucking hilarious, and it's creepy and all the good stuff that it could be. Rudy Ray Moore is an icon in my book. He is one of the masters of independent cinema, especially when it comes to B movies and exploitation movies. It's just he did it himself. He did it his way, and that's something very admirable. And for him to have so many movies under his belt with that DIY ethic that he had is just it's very good. So let's get to let's go to the mid 80s, the late 80s. We've got Death by Temptation, which is a movie that it was written, directed, and stars James Bond III. I don't know a lot about James Bond III other than this movie. There's not a lot of information about James Bond III other than from this movie. And it's got the guy from A Different World. I can't remember his name. But it is credited with being Samuel L. Jackson's first movie that he ever was in. Now, it didn't get released until years after it was made because production, they lost money or something, and Troma ended up buying it and releasing it. But it's definitely a fun take on like a vampire demon movie. And I feel like this is the only one on the list that really kind of this one, Petey Wheatstraw and Abby, I feel like are a little bit lower on the dial. People don't really know them as well as some of these other ones that I have on the list. But it's definitely a fun watch, and I think you should go check it out. It fits with the vibe of other Troma acquisitions. Not the ones that they made, but the ones they bought. So it's definitely a fun watch. And Samuel L. Jackson's in it for maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But he's there. Next up is People Under the Stairs. Wes Craven was also he was very ahead of his time in with what he was doing with everything in his with his filmmaking. You know, New Nightmare was like the prototype for Scream. People Under the Stairs is definitely like, I feel like it's the prototype for that 90s horror, 90s black horror movie. It's got Ving Rhames in it. I can't remember the kid's name, but he's got this this child actor that he was in a few things back in the day. But it's it's the whole movie is basically them trying to rob their landlord because they're gentrifying the neighborhood, and they're putting people out of their houses, and then the scary shit ensues when the kid gets stuck in the house. You've got to check that one out, though. I can't recommend People Under the Stairs enough. It is up there in my top favorite horror movies, period, of all time. So is Tales from the Hood. Now we can't talk about 80s and early 90s black horror without talking about Leprechaun Going to the Hood. Leprechaun, man, he's buck, because he didn't just go to the hood once. That motherfucker went to the hood twice. And for a Leprechaun to go to the hood twice, that's pretty fucking, it's pretty stone cold. I say this sounding like the whitest person ever. Like, this is not my talking voice. This is like a broadcast voice that I put on so that people understand what I'm saying. I enunciate a lot better because I'm aware that I'm talking to an audience, and not to another fucking hick that lives out in the sticks, or just this. It's in the South. We have a way with words, and we have a way with butchering words as well. But yeah, Leprechaun in the fucking Hood, man. I actually screened this one last year for St. Patrick's Day, Leprechaun in the Hood, and then I was planning on doing Back to the Hood this year. I don't know if I will actually do that or not, but it's an idea. Ice-T is in Leprechaun in the Hood. Predominantly black cast. The only person I think that is not black in the whole movie is Warwick Davis. I'm pretty sure same thing for Leprechaun in the Hood too. Back to the Hood, I'm sorry. And it's been a while since I watched Back to the Hood, I will admit, so I don't really know. I feel like it had Sticky Fingers in it, but I could be wrong. He was doing a little bit of acting at that time, so it wouldn't be too far fetched. But yeah, the Leprechaun in the Hood movies, fantastic. I think he went to space after he went to the hood, so, Leprechaun was just getting around. Sticking with that early 90s kick, one of my favorite horror movies, period, of all time, this is probably my top 5 horror movies of all time, is Candyman. Oof. Jeez, I can't speak highly enough of Candyman. The whole movie is about gentrification and white saviors getting their comeuppance. It could be viewed as it could be viewed different ways, but that's the way I view it. I feel like it's a movie about gentrification and about how white people feel like they need to save black people from themselves. Um, when really, like, it's not that. That's not always the case. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely that story of the white savior getting caught up in shit, getting caught up too deep in their bullshit, trying to save the world. Because she doesn't believe in Candyman, and that's what ultimately leads to her demise, is her disbelief in Candyman. But yeah, Candyman, just beautifully shot. Tony Todd is amazing. I love Tony Todd. I met him a couple years ago at Days of the Dead. I got to see him sing My Girl at karaoke this year at Days of the Dead. He's a fantastic man. He's a fantastic actor. I could just listen to the guy talk for fucking hours and hours and hours. So just put him on screen. I'll be in fucking awe of the man. But the cinematography of Candyman is bar none. Some of the best, most beautiful shots in all of horror. But yeah, that one's a good one to check out for sure. All the Candyman sequels are also amazing movies. The third one being probably the weakest, but part 2 is a really good sequel. Part 3, it's not as great. I'm going to go a little out of order because I do want to talk about some horror movies that, while they're not necessarily black horror movies, they do have big, good, memorable characters that are black. Halloween Resurrection being one of those. It has Busta Rhymes playing Freddy, and Tyra Banks is in there as well. They're both prominent characters in the movie. Busta Rhymes has got that trick or treat motherfucker line, and it's ridiculous, but it's also really awesome. Of course, there's Demon Knight, which does have, like, it does have a weird, for it to be a movie that takes place out in the desert and predominantly white cast. There's 2 black characters. One being the lead, Jada Pinkett Smith, playing, I can't remember her name at this moment, but she plays the lead character. And then the attendant at the inn is the other black character, but they're both main characters in the movie. But it also, like what I was saying, it does, for a movie that's, like, not really set in, like, an urban setting or like an inner city, or like it doesn't have a lot of black people in it. It does strangely feel like a black movie. It could be the use of suicide, 1-800-SUICIDE by the Gravediggers in it, or just that Jada Pinkett Smith is that fucking big on screen and she just makes it a black movie by being there. But yeah, that's definitely a fucking great one that I like. A woman of color survives the movie. She's the fucking new Demon Knight at the end of the movie. And sorry for the spoiler, but fuck, that's just wonderful. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Kincaid, my favorite of the Dream Warriors, because he tells Freddy to come on, and he calls him a burnt-faced pussy, and he's got all these smart-ass remarks that he has to make, and I just think that's fantastic. I'm trying to think if there's any more that I might have left out that are not really black horror movies per se, but they have really prominent black characters. Um, I mean, Deep Blue Sea, it's got LL Cool J in it. H2O's got LL Cool J as well. He's a pretty good big character. Well, he's a kind of background character in that movie, but he's there. He is noticeable and memorable. Um, God, what else was I gonna say? Anaconda with Ice Cube. That's definitely Ice Cube's pretty much the main character in the movie. One of the main characters in the movie, because it's not really a big. It's not like a big, huge ensemble cast. It's just, you know, four or five people on a crew on like a expedition. So, but he's still there. He's in there. He's in that movie a lot. I think he might make it to the end. I'm not 100% sure. It's been a while since I watched Anaconda. So yeah, tracking it on up, we got Bones with Snoop Dogg. Pam Grier's also in that movie. Man, that's just and that one I think is made by a black filmmaker as well. I think it's God. He wrote. He might have written and directed this one. I can't remember the guy's name though. I can see his fucking face in my head perfectly. But yeah, Bones is definitely a fun one. It's a movie I didn't really appreciate at the time when it came out. I thought it was kind of silly, and it is. It's over the top, and it's kind of played for the B movie-ness of it. It's kind of played for the exploitation of it, which is really fun, and I just think I think you should give that one a shot. If you haven't watched it or you haven't watched it in a while, go ahead and check that one out because I think you'll appreciate it better on the second go round. So yeah, that pretty much leads us up to now the modern era of black horror, which is sadly there's still underrepresentation of people of color, black people specifically, women of color. A lot of people are underrepresented in horror, or just mainstream cinema in general. But some of my favorite, more recent black horror movies. This one is like a more of a sci-fi twist to it, but it's still very horror influenced as well. Attack the Block. It's British. It takes place in like the projects of England or London or whatever. John Boyega is the main character, and boom, dude, this fucking movie just kicks ass. It's a bunch of fucking hoodlums in it's a bunch of thug kids, badass kids in England using that fucking English slang. Just sign me up, man. And it's different from like American black horror movies because of the cultural differences and everything. But aliens end up trying to come in and basically like invade the block, and they have to fight They have to fight for their street against aliens, and I think that's amazing. It's a very fun, epic movie. And then of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jordan Peele's recent works. The most wonderful horror movies back to back years. Or I think so Get Out I think was 2017, and then Us was 19. Right? Was it 19? Yeah. So it wasn't exactly back to back years, but Get Out is definitely a very fucking awesome suspense thriller with like that horror element to it. It is very Twilight Zone eerie. man, if you haven't seen Get Out by now, then what are you even doing with your life? Like, you have to be a racist if you didn't see Get Out. That was a joke, by the way. I hope nobody really gets, oh, he said that if you haven't seen Get Out, you're a racist. No, it's not for real. Like, I understand there are reasons why you haven't seen a movie, even though it is the most amazing and most talked about movie from that year. Well, ooh, God, see, that might even be a lie, because Hereditary came out, I think, the same year, so, and we all know how I feel about Hereditary, but still, Hereditary is not a black movie. It is definitely the best black horror movie that came out that year. Us, amazing, again, I mean, just brilliant performances. Like, this is the thing, Jordan Peele has the knack for perfectly casting his movies, and perfectly writing his movies. He knows how to get the right performances out of people, I think, and that is just very key and very important. I'm looking forward to the new Candyman. I know he's only producing it, but still, if he's producing it, I trust his taste and his horror fandom enough to believe that this movie is going to be amazing. I don't really look forward to remakes like this very often. But yeah, Candyman remake, a movie I thought did not need to be remade. A movie that, well, it's not even a remake now, so they're saying it's like a spiritual sequel to the original movie. So it's not really a remake. So I'm not really excited for a remake. I'm excited for a sequel, which is actually way cooler than a remake. So I'm still really fucking pumped for it. I think Us and Get Out are two of the most important movies of the last decade. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. Come on out February 12th and watch a really cool black horror movie. I will go ahead and say it was made by, for, and stars black people. So it is for black, by black, all around blackness in this movie. It is one that I talked about on this podcast. So there are your hints. You can go narrow that down from that list if you want to, or you can just come out and be pleasantly surprised. Either way, hope you come out. Again, that's February 12th at Vizart Video. It's free, but donations, of course, are extremely encouraged. We want to keep Vizart able to do these events for me, able to do cool stuff like Cult Movies in the Cave and VHS Potluck. So go ahead and donate to them. Bring your ID and shit so you can sign up for a membership at Vizart and rent cool movies all the time, man. They got a great selection. They got like 40,000 fucking movies to choose from. But yeah, that's all I got this week. Thank y'all for listening so much. Hopefully you're already patrons or definitely considering being patrons over at patreon.com/Martell's Movie Madness. Make sure you're following us on social media at Martell's Movie Madness on Instagram and Facebook, at Movie Madness 69 on Twitter. Man, and a way you can support the podcast without even having to spend any money is just going and rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you're listening. Word of mouth. Just tell people about the podcast. Share the links. I mean, just put it out there. If you're enjoying it, let everybody know. But yeah, that's what I got this week. Thank y'all for listening. Let's watch some fucking movies.
Well, it looks like you survived this time. Come back next week. See if you can do it